Hi, my name is Sarah Green and this is my recorded video assessment for my level 3 kettlebells. So today I'm going to demonstrate 5 different kettlebell exercises from the syllabus. I'll go through a little bit the purpose of the exercise, the muscles recruited, I'll demonstrate the technique and talk it through. And then, if appropriate, I'll discuss any progressions, regressions, and also any contraindications or things of note for the client. Just before we get started, just a quick note about the shoes I've chosen to do this activity in today. So I'm in my Vivo barefoot shoes because they are flat, there's no rise, and I can spread my toes well on the floor, so it gives me a nice, good, even grip and a nice stable base from which to work. Okay, so the first exercise I've chosen is the kettlebell deadlift, and I've selected a slightly heavier kettlebell for this one, so this one's a 12. So the kettlebell deadlift, this one I really love because it builds really nice foundational hip hinge mechanics, and also really good for posterior chain strength. And just helps prepare clients for the other activities that we might build into that, such as swings and cleans and that kind of thing. So the primary muscle groups it targets are the glutes, the hamstrings, also the erector spinae muscles, forearms, quads, ankle stabilizers, good full body workout. Okay, so we're going to start with feet about hip width apart, and the kettlebell is going to be placed between the feet. So from here we want to go for a hinge with the hips, keeping the shoulders back and down, straight with the spine, and then both hands are going to come down onto the handles. So I can rest my forearms on my knees just to get my hands in the right place here. So I'm gripping the handles, and with a nice tall spine, shoulders nice and engaged. I'm going to inhale. As I exhale, I'm going to think about driving through the heels to come straight up. So I'm driving through the heels to stand tall, and I'm going to extend through the hips and the knees at the top. And I'm going to come down in the same way, nice and controlled all the way down. So big push through the heels to come up, keeping the spine neutral and controlling all the way down. From the side. Come up and neutral all the way down. Okay, so to progress this exercise, we could take it into something like a single leg RDL, which is still quite a challenging exercise for clients. So it would be the same principle. So one arm out to the side, the free arm's going to come out to the side, and the other hand's going to take hold of the kettlebell. And then from here, I'm going to take the back leg back, bending a little bit into the standing leg, hinging forward. So just working on that hip hinge, and then push to come up. It's a bit of a balance challenge. And drive. So if the client finds this particularly challenging, I would give them something to hold on to with their hands if they needed to. Or if clients struggle a little bit with the feet sort of hip width apart for a standard deadlift, I could also offer this in the more of a sumo squat position with the legs a little bit wider, which they might find easier. So it does require a bit more through the hips with a flat back to push to come up. And this I'd offer as an alternative. So things I'd be looking for as a coach would be I'd be watching for rounding through the back or for reaching too far forwards, making sure they've placed the weight in the correct position. And I wouldn't offer it to any clients that are suffering from acute back pain or anything. So any sort of acute lower back pain is probably not the exercise for them. Okay, the next exercise that I'm going to demonstrate is the kettlebell swing. This one I also like because it's really good at developing full body power, but also conditioning as well. So depending on whether you use a heavy kettlebell or a light one, or just go for many reps, it's good for both of those. It's good because it works on a bit more of like an explosive momentum-based exercise, working on that triple extension through the hips, rather than sort of muscular lifting, so it's a slightly different kind of activity. Target muscles would be the glutes and the hamstrings. Also, you'd need to engage a lot through the core, through the forearms, and also a little bit of grip strength as well. So, the technique here is quite important. A lot of clients do get this wrong, so setting up and cueing it is quite important. So I'll demonstrate it forward facing and also from the side as well, so you can see quite clearly what I'm doing. So, unlike the deadlift, the bell's going to come in front of me. So I'm going to place it in front, so a good handspan in front, feet hip distance apart. And we're looking for that hinge and grip. And then what we're going to be doing from here is moving the bell up between my legs, and then I'm going to be bringing it forward using a hip hinge and squeeze pattern. So we're looking for a hip hinge rather than a lift. Cautions with this is there is a risk of injury if there's a poor hinge mechanics due to things like any sorts of injuries or anything like that, and because the weight's going to be at the end of quite a long lever, we just need to make sure that it's controlled. So we're just trying to avoid any overextension or dropping the bell too low. Okay, so we're going to pick it up, swing it behind and fling forward. So hip hinge here, and I'm keeping my elbows bent and purposely tight in towards my side. So I'm just allowing my body to move with the momentum, and it's a hip hinge pattern. And then when I'm ready to replace the bell on the floor, I'm going to let it go behind me and then track out in front, so that I'm not trying to break the momentum pattern. The injuries can occur when the momentum is broken, either at the top or at the bottom. So to replace it, just allow the bell to track forward and place it safely on the floor. So let me just show you from the side what this looks like. So placing the bell slightly in front, standing behind, I'm focusing on that hip hinge position, keeping the bell close to my body. And then when I'm ready to replace it, just let it track forward and assisting it down to the ground. So to progress this, you could replace the bell with a heavier kettlebell. That would be an easier way to progress it. Or you could do perhaps a single arm swing instead. Or you could add some rotation in as well. So you could do a single arm swing, or you could sort of take a step round to the side and swing, and another step round and swing, and add in some rotational work as well. That would be quite a nice way to progress it. So things to look for, I would avoid anything, so if someone's got like uncontrolled hypertension, so high blood pressure, that would be something that probably wouldn't be the exercise for them. Or if there's anyone that with particularly acute back pain, I'd probably choose something else to work on, so sort of contraindications to avoid. Okay, the next exercise I'm going to demonstrate is the kettlebell windmill. So I'm going to select a slightly lighter kettlebell for this exercise because it's going to be taking the weight above my head. So just move this to one side. So kettlebell windmill. This one I've got an 8 kilo kettlebell for this one. So this one, I quite like this one because it's really good for shoulder stability and control, because it involves holding the weight above the head, as well as a little bit of a rotation and a shoulder protraction to get the shoulder in the right position to hold and support the weight above my head. I also like it because it works on a little bit of that thoracic mobility and a little bit of extension. There's also quite a lot of lateral core strength, so I'm really going to be working through the obliques, working through my QL, working through hamstrings, a little bit of deltoid and some rotator cuff work as well. So overall it's very, very good for shoulders. It is like a dissociated exercise because it separates the upper body from the lower body, and it's really good for working on mobility, which I love. So what we're going to be doing is taking hold of the kettlebell in one arm, in one hand, and we're going to be pushing it overhead. So the start position is a little bit like the end of an overhead kettlebell press. And the idea is we want to try and keep that kettlebell overhead. So I'm going to go for the other hand. It's going to come down the inside of my standing leg, and I'm going to rotate and open up through my shoulders just to stabilise the kettlebell here and coming up. So I'm working on a slight external rotation of the foot that I'm going down on, and I'm working a little bit into the hips to control the lowering phase and pushing to come up. So the coaching points here are to look for the wrist to be stacked over the shoulder, controlling that rotation and that side hinge as well. So if I was to progress this exercise, you could add in a little bit of an overhead press of the kettlebell first before you then took it into the windmill. Things that I would avoid would be making sure that the torso is engaged and we're not collapsing the shoulder, not collapsing the shoulder, not bringing it forward. So just controlling where the weight is, because we think about the weight is at the end of a long lever as well. So if the client is struggling in this position, we don't want them taking the weight forward because that's going to pull them forward. So to make it a little bit easier, I would do some sort of half range windmill. So if the client has struggled to execute a full range windmill, I'll just get them to work on a little bit of the movement, just try and get them to open up through the shoulders before they took it into a full range windmill. So again, this is another one. If there's anyone who's got particular shoulder instability or an active rotator cuff injury, I would probably avoid it for that. I mean, it's great to work on for shoulder stability and mobility, but probably not anyone that's in an active injury state. And again, another one, if there's sort of any acute lower back pain, so it doesn't bother with that twist and side lateral flexion. Okay, the next one I'm going to demonstrate is the kettlebell clean. So I'm going to take it from a clean to a rack position. So this is good for developing power, it's good for developing coordination, and it's an exercise that gets us into a nice position to press the kettlebell overhead. So you can take it from a deadlift up into a clean and then into an overhead press. But today I'm just going to focus a little bit on the clean to rack technique. So the muscles that are involved are glutes, hamstrings, core muscles, the lats, forearms, deltoids. This is a great one to recruit a lot of the muscles. So well, the way we want to start is with the kettlebell in line with the feet, and we're going to think about the same thing as we did for the deadlift, which is a hinge to stand. And then as I pull it up, so I'm going to be pulling the kettlebell, and I'm going to continue up into a high pull position, and then I want to get the elbow in front and allow the kettlebell to just rest in that elbow crease. So I'm focusing on that move and getting underneath the kettlebell. So it's a little bit tricky, a little bit technical. So think about getting the elbow close to the ribs, nice neutral wrist, and the forearm being in that vertical position. So from here, and push through, come up and bring the kettlebell to here. Focus on keeping the shoulders nice and stable, core tight, making sure that the hip hinge doesn't get lost in the concentration of getting it through to the rack position. Let me just demonstrate from the sides. You can see from the side. A good start position. Start in a deadlift stance. If the client was ready to progress this exercise, you could combine it with some of the others, so with the deadlift and with the overhead press to make a slightly more compound, bigger movement that involves a bit more full body. Or you could just work on, so what I was demonstrating was a power stance, so catching it in a standing position. So what you could do is work on that controlled deceleration So when you catch it, taking it down into the squat to manage that deceleration and then pushing to come back up. So let me just demonstrate that. So from here, going up, catching and managing that deceleration. So as I'm pulling up and catching, and I'm turning it to catch it in the rack, I'm already starting to manage that deceleration movement all the way down. If the client wasn't ready for this yet, I would give them perhaps the high pull to work on. So just working on the mechanics of the high pull before turning it into the rack catch position. Things to be careful of, I would avoid this for any clients that have wrist injuries, any active things going on with the wrist that we're concerned about, or anything that is anything that's going to exacerbate sort of wrist or forearm related problems. Okay, the final exercise that I'm going to demonstrate today is the Turkish get up. This one is a brilliant exercise. It's a full body sequence of movements or sequence of mobility type movements. It's great for improving core stability, shoulder stability and multi-planar coordination. It pretty much targets all the muscles, the core, glutes, shoulders, lats, obliques, and some hip stabilisation as well. So the way I would teach it is to break it down into the different pieces of movement and then invite the client to try and knit it together. Take it slowly, or you can focus on just one or two pieces of the movement and take it from there. So I will show what that looks like. So it starts in a lying down position. I'm going to stick with this quite lightweight for this. Again, it's another overhead position. So we'll start lying down. And I'm going to take the weight above the head. And I'm going to have one knee bent. So same arm weight as the leg that's bent. So taking weight above the head. And the other arm up to the side. This is the start position. So I'm already using controlling shoulder stabilisation to control this weight above my head. And then from here, I'm going to come up onto my elbow. And then up onto my hand. And then I'm going to step this cross leg through and I'm going to come up into a half bridge hip side plank lunge and then into a low kneeling position, high kneeling, and then up from here into standing. All the while maintaining the weight above my head. And so from here I'm halfway through the movement. So now I'm going to do the same thing in reverse. So I'm going to come down onto my knee, high kneeling. And then I'm going to bring my hand down, step the leg out into a side plank position, sticking that back leg through. Then I'm going to come down onto the elbow, across the leg, and all the way down. So again. And just making sure I have a safe, controlled management of the weight down to the floor. So if someone's struggling to complete the full set of movements, we could work on a sit-up part of that. So holding the weight above the head, just work on that, sitting up and lower, which you can either do with one bent leg, both legs bent, or both legs straight out in front. To make it harder, as you come up into that standing position, so from here, come into a deep squat position and then push and stand to come up. So we're probably going to try and avoid this for anyone that's got any shoulder instability or anyone that suffers from postural hypertension or dizziness getting from one position to another. And just make sure there's enough space around to move, because it does involve moving around space and making sure there's no objects around. So this completes my demonstration of the 5 different kettlebell techniques. talk about purpose, target muscles, coaching points, progressions and regressions, and any key cautions. Thank you.